Happy Friday, Cubs fans. On this edition of the CHGO Cubs Podcast, we'll be talking Cody Bellinger rumors, if the Cubs are looking to ship him out, some of the moves they made earlier this week, and some of the non-tender decisions the Cubs have on this fine Friday, all coming up on this edition of the CHGO Cubs Podcast. This is the CHGO Cubs Podcast. My name is Corey. I am joined, as always, by Brendan. We are coming to you on Friday. It is November 22nd, Brendan. And a quick shout out to our guys, Kevin Wells, Cody Delmendo, for filling the very big shoes that I had to leave the last couple weeks.
You're back. How does it feel to be back talking about the beautiful Chicago Cubs offseason? That's getting hot.
Great.
Big deals coming.
Brendan, the best part of I think being gone for a couple weeks is that you could basically drop me in any random episode from the last 2.5 years, and we would have no idea having the same conversation. So it's like you don't need to skip a beat. Let me guess. They're not spending as much money as everybody wants. They're not really in on any of the top free agents. And nobody is really sure what Jed Hoyer is going to do and how he's going to make the team better while not mortgaging the future like he always talks about. Do I have that right?
You do. You forgot one important detail.
Great.
An 83, 84, 85 win projection.
Yeah.
How many times have we said that? Crazy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, so are
crazy.
you suggesting that Eli Morgan does not bump them to a 90-win projection?
I'm a little upset about Alphonse and Rosario, Corey. I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know what we're going to do with our life.
Get out of here.
I actually do like the deal.
Yeah, I do too. I do want to talk about that, the deal to get reliever Eli Morgan from Cleveland, and the prospect the Cubs sent. The Cubs have some non-tender decisions on this Friday. Brendan and I are recording this a little early, on this Friday. So we may talk about stuff that they've already made the decision on, but that's just kind of we're doing the best we can with that. So if it sounds outdated, it might be, but only slightly. So we'll talk about that. But, Brendan, I kind of want to jump right into the Cody Bellinger rumor that, kind of popped up on Thursday. And it was one that was getting talked about by, folks like Ken Rosenthal. I saw it on Foul Territory and some other, legitimate kind of places. We've dealt with a lot of rumors over the last few years where you can kind of immediately ask, okay, should I believe this? Where is this coming from? This doesn't sound right. This was one that it makes a good bit of sense to hear. I wasn't really in the camp of being particularly excited that he was going to opt back in, though you and I kind of landed both, I think, being on, he's a good player. If he's overpaid for what his production was last year, the Cubs are one of the franchises that should be able to eat that overpayment to have a good player. Whether they're acting like they can do that or not is a separate discussion for a different day. But I'm curious, what your initial thought, even just to that rumor being out there so soon after he opts back in. What did you make of kind of reading those rumors on Thursday?
My first thought was, I don't know how much I should look into it as a substantive type idea by the front office. I have no idea. Winter meetings have not started yet. We have a free agent market that's going to start booming in the next few weeks, hopefully, and that determines the market. The Cubs need to find a way, if that is their true intention, to boost their 80-ish win projection upwards to scratchy 90 wins.
Yeah.
So for them to trade Bellinger and achieve that type of higher win projection seems impossible, quite frankly. Then again, it doesn't discount that there is maybe a possibility for it to happen in crazy circumstances.
Yeah.
But I would be a little surprised if they do end up going and trading Bellinger if they still want to win next year. If they don't want to win, they want to sit, hang out in this mid 80-ish territory, then okay, save some money, and that would be disappointing.
You're telling that's putting it lightly. I think this is one of those where, like, my initial thing, like I said, I would have preferred he opted out, and because they're, not operating as though they're just going to blow past some of these luxury tax tiers, like, have the extra money and see if you can get more slug or something like that. But once they have him, again, good player. He provides a safety net for the outfield positions. He provides a safety net if you're rolling with Michael Busch at first base. You can play first base. I think it's one of those, even as a hypothetical, what is the bigger picture? Trading Bellinger in a vacuum, sure, fine. Like, he's slightly overpaid for the production that he gave last year. If you reverted back to 2023, you might feel better about that. If you reverted back to 2017, you'd be getting a steal, so there's obviously layers to that. But trading him in a vacuum, I'm fine with. But yeah, it's to your point, like, then you are a step back already from your offense last year. So you have to replace that production. And as we keep discussing, we're already feeling like they're not good enough last year anyway. So if they had some sort of trick up their sleeve, there's a trade that they're looking to make for a bat that they need to make room for, or some other trade that they just want to clear up some finances for, that could work. But that involves a lot of trust, from us as fans to say, sure, I'm open to trading Cody Bellinger as long as there's this, like, top secret plan to make the team better. It would be different if right now we were sitting here and they were, lighting up all of these Juan Soto rumors, and you're kind of reading the tea leaves.
Well, they are, aren't they?
They're not even mentioned. I mean, it's pathetic. Like, okay. They're not even at the table. It's like the most pathetic thing. Cody went on a rant about it the other day. I'm not going to do it, but it's like just absolutely pathetic from this organization. But it would be one thing if you were reading that, like, the Cubs are all in on Juan Soto. They're meeting with him, blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, okay, they need, Bellinger opted in and they need to clear that payroll. They need to clear the space on the roster, et cetera. But you're not really hearing that. So when you first read that, that is the concern. It's like, well, what if they trade him in the hope that they can get better or, like, utilize the resources better, but then that doesn't materialize? Like, now you're down a good player, and what replaces it? So I'd be fine with it if their plan is to supplement the offense elsewhere, but I don't know.
The Cubs have right now, if COTS is correct for payroll estimation, $50 million underneath that first tier of the tax with Bellinger. They trade Bellinger, they get back, let's say, a pre-arb guy, they want to dish out salary, then you have around 80-ish million or so to spend.
Yeah, I mean, presumably, if you're making this deal, the other team is money.
Yeah, they're eating money.
That's why you're doing it.
That's what would be the idea.
The assumption, yeah.
Yes. Now, there's many paths forward. The Cubs right now, and Bellinger's included in this discussion, they have a bunch of 2-win guys at basically every position on their projections: left field, center field, right field, right, everywhere, right? And that's why they're kind of this average type team. So one of those, 2 of those, 3 of those guys have to outperform significantly. That being said, there are worse problems to have, where every player on your roster starting is basically average to above average. It's not that bad of a problem. You have to find a way to make it work. So if the idea is, okay, we're going to trade from that group, one of those opportunities is Bellinger, then I understand it, but it's about bringing in a higher ceiling, even if you risk a lower floor.
Yeah.
Now, if they keep Bellinger, you can still explore trades for Busch or Paredes. Nico Horner's been brought up, of course, but if we're talking about money and trading and clearing money, then no other player on this roster has the dollar per WAR value than Nico Horner. And like Bellinger, both those players have the highest possible floors. So my creativity is this. My ideal outcome is this. I would like to keep Bellinger assuming his market's not going to bring a big return. That's my assumption on this discussion. I would like to keep Bellinger. I would like to keep Nico. I would like to have that floor. And I would like to somehow leverage your prospects, Bush and Paredes, in a trade somehow. Not in all one trade, but somehow leverage those guys. The reason for that is because unlike Nico, unlike Bellinger, I perceive Bush to have a lower floor. And his ceiling, I don't believe is as high as those two guys. Likewise, Paredes, his ceiling is quite high, but I think he has a really low floor if we saw a lot of the 2-month stretch he showed last season with the Cubs. That's my ideal path forward. Then again, if the market is robust for Bellinger, you can still accomplish what I'm talking about because he's also included in that 2-warish mix. It's that I just have different confident levels in him achieving that versus the other guys.
Well, I don't think the market would be robust. I think if they felt that way, Cody would have opted out and let a team pay him.
Exactly.
If the market was
especially
robust.
with
they're not.
Boris.
You wouldn't be doing that to get anything. You'd be doing it to get the money, somebody else to take that money. And look, like I think you and our good friend Dr. Ryan Tomier were talking about this afternoon. Like if they're gonna trade Cody Bellinger to free up the money and trade, Owen Casey and some other guys for Vlad Guerrero Jr., great. Like, yeah, that sounds great. That gets them a bona fide star, the slug that you're missing. But like, is that what's going to happen? Like, that feels like it feels like these last few off seasons, we've even lowered our expectation, like, okay, they're not going to get Ohtani or whatever. After a while, we lowered that expectation. I bought it pretty fully.
Oh yeah, you did.
For part of that time. But then it's like, okay, well, what if they do this and this and this the rest of the offseason? And even then we seem to be overshooting, So this is one of those areas where it's like, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've made that up in our head that they're going to pull off this amazing trade. And we're all like, oh, wow, we were wrong about Jed Hoyer. He does have the cojones, to pull something like this off. I don't know that. I'm just in my most pessimistic.
You're in a horrible mood today. I can just tell.
Chicago Cubs.
Yeah. Awful mood you're in. I'm in a bad mood too. Let's be transparent. We're not in good moods over here.
Well, and listen, I'm not going to get into it, but I think you alluded, the reason I missed the last couple weeks is I'm dealing with some stuff in my personal life, and it does sort of center
amplify
things for you. No, just what matters, what doesn't matter. And I'm reading these direction. As I'm dealing with this, you're reading these articles about, well, the Cubs aren't even really in the top of the pitching market either. They're looking at these, losers in the second and third tier. And I'm like, I can't with this. It's going to make my head explode if I try to read more about this, $5 billion organization operating in the same free agent tier as, some of these clown teams in the league, while these other teams are putting together their big $1 billion pitch for Juan Soto and stuff like that. I'm like, I can't deal with this right now.
That's so disappointing.
I'm very pessimistic about all of this.
I feel as if you should be pessimistic. I don't believe it's irrational. The rational pushback is, well, they do have a good farm system. I don't want to talk about that.
Pessimistic relative to where I want them to be. We talk about it all the time. Their situation is fine. They're healthier than a lot of other organizations, but they're not in that S tier, and that's where they got to be.
Well, they're not even talking to Juan Soto. Again, Cody talked about it and everything, but that's just mind-boggling. They're not even at the table for a future Hall of Famer putting up numbers. I
appreciate the candor this time as opposed to last time where it was well, maybe they're talking to Shohei,
it is bizarre. It's just a bizarre period of time with this entire organization. I don't want to say they haven't picked a lane, but on the outside looking in, without knowing the details, they're not picking a lane.
Yeah.
It's how do you,
well, and it felt that way, even reading some of the online discussion about, and I want to get your thoughts on Eli Morgan as a pitcher and just how he can help this Cubs bullpen. But reading some of the discussion, I saw some people it ruined their day that the Cubs, traded, an A-ball prospect with a 34% K rate, an 18-year-old. And I'm not saying is a bad prospect or anything like that. But I'm like, guys, at some point, are we trying to win at the major league level, or are we hoarding single A prospects? Like, what do you guys want them to do?
With second percentile whiff rates, by the way.
Like, one of the, at some point, we got to pick a lane here.
Yeah, he's an athletic guy, but I'm with you. It's like this is like the most projectable value you can possibly get. Like,
but that's to your point about not picking a lane. It feels like the fan base doesn't know what to do either.
Well,
like,
listen,
should we be hoarding these prospects, or are we?
We've been through a lot. Okay, don't pick on us. Let's do the ad break here. We'll come back around. We'll talk about Eli Morgan. First ad break here is from Chevy. With the Black Friday sales event going on all month long at Ray Chevrolet, you can score doorbuster deals on your next vehicle without the door-busting stress. Head in today to shop their huge selection of new Chevy models with special Black Friday prices. Right now, take $3,250 up to $1,300 off MSRP on most new Chevy models, or shop over 125 of their vehicles priced under $20,000. It's one of the top selling Chevy dealers in the Midwest. You'll always be able to shop one of Chicagoland's largest Chevy inventories. Visit our partner this November at the location of Route 12 in Fox Lake or at raychevrolet.com. And if you've heard of the Ray Chevrolet, then you've also heard of Ray's Price Promise. They're guaranteed to make your next vehicle more affordable than ever with no price changing, no add-ons, and no hidden fees ever. That means the incredible prices we're talking about now, you can expect to see them the very same when you shop Ray Chevy in-store or online. Shop the Black Friday sales event all month long by visiting Ray Chevrolet in Fox Lake or raychevrolet.com. They've been serving the community since 1963. Together, let's drive. And together, let's have a Blue Moon. Some beers can say they're brewed for baseball. Only Blue Moon is brewed by baseball, beer, baseball. They just go together, and no beer goes better than the one that was literally born in a ballpark. It was snowing in Chicago today, apparently. So I was told. I'm not in Chicago right now. A little hot over here, to be quite honest with you. But listen, if you're dreaming about those warm summer July days in the bleachers, crack open a Blue Moon. That's how you get your mind right, Corey. Why strike out with the same old beer when you can get something one of a kind? A beer this good only comes around once in a Blue Moon, but you can enjoy it all season long. Bring the ballpark to you with Blue Moon Belgian style wheat ale. It's one of a kind every time. Get Blue Moon delivered by visiting get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO to see your delivery options. That's get.bluemoonbeer.com/CHGO. Blue Moon, made brighter. Celebrate responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
All right, Brendan. So, I mean, just like I want to talk about Morgan and get your thoughts on that. But, wrapping on Bellinger, like, yeah, it's I hate to use the cop out because it feels that way, but it's like, it's one of those moves where it's like, I'd have to know what the plan is, and we're not going to get told what the plan is. Like, we'll see if this even materializes. We've talked
about it's not a cop out. I mean, he's like projected as one of the highest ceiling value players on the team, and he's being paid for that ceiling. It's not a cop out whatsoever. Yeah. They're proposing to trade their highest paid positional player.
Yeah. So it's like, I can see the potential vision of how that works, and ultimately you end up in a place where the team is made better. But without like having that kind of locked in, I'm a little unnerved about that. I don't think, for as pessimistic, even as like angry as we've been, I don't think that like we would be in a scenario where they like dump the salary and are like, well, yeah, that's just all we're doing this offseason. That's like, even that's a level of pessimism I haven't reached yet. But with how much room they have towards the tax, like, I don't know. They haven't behaved like that in recent years. That would be a new low for them. Anything's possible.
Anything's possible. I mean, you're to your point, they're so far under the tax that it's not a tax dump. The first thought came to my mind was like, oh, well, they did that for Schwarber in 2020. But then again, that was restricted TV budget revenue. And then actually at the time, in their thinking, would have protected their salary. So I don't think this is quite similar to that respect, because that's the first thought I was going. They're 50 million underneath that first tier. So I don't believe it would be a salary dump either.
But without knowing what this top secret plan is, like, it's tough to be like, yeah, sure. Like,
that being said, though, if we just imagine Bellinger's on this team starting in right field every day, that's probably the best defense in Major League Baseball. Ian Happ, Gold Glover, PCA, best center fielder in the league. Bellinger, former Gold Glover in center field. Gold Glove up the middle with Nico and Dansby at the corners. Let's improve the corners. Catcher, let's improve the catcher position. Bring in an ace. Maybe bring in Vlad Guerrero Jr., Corey. Maybe Sasaki as well. Sure. That's an offseason I'm signing up on.
Yeah, sure.
Let me run the team. I'll do it for free.
Can't wait to be let down. All right, let's talk about Eli Morgan, though, because I actually like this trade. I think, when we're talking about, if we're lowering the parameters, we're not just, going for the simple solutions of like, we'll just add Juan Soto, or as you just said, like trade for Vlad Guerrero Jr., whatever it is. These are kind of obvious answers. How do we make this team better? How do we inch up that win projection? Banking on some internal projection, as Jed always talks about, hoping that prospects take that next step, et cetera, et cetera. What else can you do that is not like these crazy grand moves that kind of work within the scheme of how this organization seems to be operating? And this feels like one. Like this, Eli is a very solid reliever, not the type of guy that's going to like wow you off the screen, but gets outs, has good stuff, like did good work for Cleveland. And that's what this bullpen needed more of. He's not going to be your closer. He's not that, guy that's going to come out in the ninth inning to close out the World Series in 20 years when the Cubs get back to the playoffs. But they needed more stability in this bullpen. You had so many young guys last year trying to make those adjustments on the fly in conjunction with a bullpen that you brought back that dealt with a ton of injuries and some major struggles from the guys that you really planned to lean on. And this is the type of move that you hope kind of mitigates those exact things from happening again next year. You get a solid guy that Craig Counsell can utilize and can trust to get outs, and it takes a little bit of the burden off of some of the inexperienced guys or guys that maybe as we saw last year, you try to kind of like thrust guys into that high leverage role. Maybe they're not ready for it, or maybe they're not truly that high leverage thing. More guys like this make that process a little smoother for Craig Counsell and Tommy Hotovy.
Someone who's thrown innings. That's a big key. We had injuries tank the season in May and June last season. Eli Morgan last season had 42 innings. Previous season, 67 innings. Previous season before that, in 2022, 66. And that was coming off his rookie year in which he started 18 games. So he's someone who has a high volume history of innings. Second to that, coming off his best year. So in one sense, Cleveland might be selling high. In the other sense, well, maybe he is this good. Last season, a 1.93 ERA, a 3.6 FIP. That's due to not being able to generate whiffs and not having a high strikeout rate. He's one of those guys who generates a lot of weak contact, and by doing so, limits the runs. You're smiling over there because I know what you're thinking. It's half the Cubs team right now.
It's just the Cubs MO.
Yeah. That's what they do. Yeah. That's what they do. And listen, giving up a single A bat who was very talented, don't get me wrong, sure. Rosario, very talented, kind of came through the system, had a lot of hype, but then again, he's whiffing a third of the time, striking out a third of the time at single A. Typically, that trait signals that you're not going to be highly confident in success in Major League Baseball. So the bet is, if you had to bet which one's more valuable, it's like a 99.999% chance the Cubs get back value at the big league level with Morgan. That is the risk Cleveland made. Yeah. They have a very good pitching infrastructure. He's going to be entering arbitration. That's what they did. The Cubs need bullpen help. They don't have as good of a pitching infrastructure as Cleveland, nor half the other league right now. This is what they have to do.
Right. We just have to hope there's not some executive over in Cleveland that's like, hey, Carter used to love this guy. We can totally pants them on some trade if we call about him. No, I think this is a good trade. And, look, I think at some point, as just as fans, we have to reconcile, like, what do we exactly want them to do with the healthy pipeline that they've developed? And there's different directions that people can feel about this. Now, you don't have to be looking at trading all of them. Of course not, right? PCAs come up. They're, I'm sure, figuring out what they want to do and how they're going to deploy Matt Shaw, who was absolutely just ripping the cover off the ball for Team USA. It's difficult not to be very excited about Matt Shaw. It's a separate episode. But, we talk about like a hypothetical Vlad Guerrero trade. That would involve prospects that would be very difficult for all of us to wave goodbye to. This is the type of trade that I don't think you can feel that way, I guess, is the point that I'm making. Like, you can believe that, they gave up a good prospect and believe that he can overcome the K rate issues, et cetera, of course. But at some point, like, if you're not willing to trade the big ticket prospects for the big ticket MLB ready players, and you're also not comfortable trading the like young lottery ticket, like dream on what they could be, raw talent type guys, what do you want to do? I mean, that like, you kind of get into this problem where it's like, okay, well then your only path forward, if that's what they do, is what happened basically, luckily for all of us, in 2015, 2016, when the Cubs won the World Series.
Won the World Series, correct.
And it
yes.
all just times together. You get like 7 guys that all move through the system, different ages, different levels, and they're all ready to try to help you win a World Series.
It all converges at one time.
For like a 2 to 3 year period. It's very difficult. It's why you don't see it happen all the time. So to me, like, can believe in the prospect, but they need to be utilizing that system to make the MLB team better. When you haven't made the playoffs in a full season since 2018, you have got to prioritize, how do we make the MLB team better? And a trade like this for Morgan, like I said, this isn't moving them from a low 80s projection to a 90 win projection, but this makes them a better team. It makes everybody in that bullpen better. That you have, as you said, a guy that has innings on his arm, he has experience, and he's put up good numbers. That makes Porter Hodge better. That makes these other guys better because there is someone who can do the job in this bullpen. And as you bring up more guys, you need these guys that Craig Counsell can lean on. And we saw that last year throughout the year. So I think you have to get comfortable with moving some of these prospects. And hopefully, I think soon, I want them to pull off a big trade. And for us to be worried about like, oh man, are we going to regret like giving up Owen Casey? Are we going to regret giving up a guy I've liked since they drafted him, James Triantos? Like, we got to win games at the MLB level, folks. Like, I would rather try to do that and worry about, 4 years from now, if we're like, oh no, they shouldn't have traded James Triantos. Fine. Like, that's a fine problem to have. It means that your team's like trying to win. They're going for it.
They're going for it. And the part of the process is when those guys get traded, well, you bring in reinforcements like they did last season, drafting Cam Smith, who was knocking on the door. A year ago, he was not even on our radars. We're talking about Matt Shaw going through the system extremely fast. Well, Cam Smith is doing the exact same thing. So the unpredictability of baseball as time goes on, for me personally, is something I'm appreciating more. And it's one of the principal concerns I have with the front office, that they believe, to your point, Corey, they can project 2026 and 2027 with confidence. That's been their MO. Who am I to say, oh, that's a bad process? But I haven't been happy with that because I feel as if they don't properly account for the changes in the league. They don't account for how baseball has evolved. They don't account for the nonlinear development that we've seen. Sometimes you just can't predict it. So I value that short-term return, that urgency, that short-term high value that we have yet to see. I'll do the ad break here, but I'm reminded of it. Yu Darvish traded almost 4 years ago. No value yet. Owen Casey finally on the 40-man roster, but 4 years went by. There was a gap of 4 years of no value from Yu Darvish. One can make the argument that it is truly one of the worst trades they've made because of a 4-year lost value gap. Hopefully Owen Casey works, but
Well, I mean, it's fine, Brendan. It's not like they could have used a really good starting pitcher at any point over the last few years. So who cares?
let me do the ad break here. I'm getting upset about you, Darvish, again. Okay, Saturday Neon, started by two college friends. Saturday Neon makes officially licensed collegiate logo LED neon signs that are perfect for your home, office, dorm room, fan cave, or bar. Check out their new essential collections featuring almost 50 of the biggest schools across the country and counting for only $75. There's no better way to represent your Big Ten team. Unlike traditional neon, these LED lights won't break or shatter, but still give you that classic uniform glow that you know and love. LEDs last up to 100,000 hours, so you'll be enjoying your sign for years to come. Super easy to install using the provided hardware or with 3M command strips. They are the perfect gift for the upcoming holiday season, and CHGO has used Saturday Neon to get our studio signs, and they look great. So use code CHGO for 10% off your order at SaturdayNeon.com. HelloFresh. The holiday season is just around the corner, and we're all looking for ways to spend and stress less. HelloFresh makes mealtime nearly hassle-free with delicious, home-delivered, chef-crafted recipes that come together quick and are less expensive than takeout. Whether you're craving hearty comfort food, trying to please picky eaters, or looking for a calorie-smart meal plan, well, HelloFresh has all the options and more available on a rotating menu of 50 recipes to choose from every week. I got to say, I have HelloFresh. I feel like a new person. I'm healthy. I feel like I can go play shortstop for the Chicago Cubs, Corey. If Dansby Swanson needs to take a few days off, call me up. I know Nico Horner is out. I got my A2000 over here. I'm a better player with HelloFresh. You can get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free Cubs, FREECUBS. Applied across 7 boxes, and for new subscribers only. It does vary by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/FREECUBS. There you go.
All right, Brendan. Before we move on, I did want to clarify, because as I'm like looking at Cody Bellinger stuff, and I did want to clarify, like, because it may be confusing. Like, my stance was that I wanted him to opt out. And today we're like, well, I'm not sure I see the vision of trading him. Like, how do they get better? I think the difference is when we were going through that first discussion, it wasn't seemingly, just based on what we're reading, abundantly clear that this team is not going to spend significant money. That was basically the premise when I wanted Cody to opt out. Not necessarily that I thought about Juan Soto, but there was some rumor the other day that they weren't even going to be in the Corbin Burns conversation either. Like, so when I was hoping that Cody would opt out, it was kind of before I got much more dismayed about what they would be doing with that extra.
Well, it was under the premise they would use that money elsewhere to spend
significantly,
which does not appear that
it does not. And look, maybe the rumors are wrong. The tea leaves, we've seen seasons
it's still
before.
Early.
Yeah, where the Cubs operate kind of a little quiet relative to the rest of the league and make some moves that people aren't expecting. So jury's still out, but I did want to offer that clarification. Like, I'm not changing my tune. I'm getting a different vibe from this offseason than I was. I feel like at this moment, I was a little too optimistic at what they might do with that extra money. I'm more pessimistic now. Let's see what happens. So
I think we're a little jaded too. I really do. We've been doing this for 3 off seasons now, where we're kind of hoping for that big fish to land, and it hasn't happened yet. So forgive us for being a little bit jaded. And I feel as if most, if not 90% plus fans feel the exact same way. We've been on the periphery of rumors and landing big players, and it just seems a little exhausting at this point as fans. It has not been an enjoyable experience, regardless if you're optimistic or not. It just has not been an enjoyable experience for 3 off seasons.
I miss the days of reading things like how insanely impressive the Cubs presentation to John Lester was, and like the VR that they created for that. And stealing him away seemingly from the San Francisco Giants. Like, that's the organization I miss. Like, you felt like they were ready to put the chips on the table and go to bat against anyone.
And maybe they will.
And
Listen,
maybe they will.
the winter meetings haven't started yet. We're getting ahead of ourselves over here, not to be spiraled by that rumor. But again, we're jaded. It has been 3 straight off seasons. And I think it's hard when you and I talk about what they can do to improve. It's really hard to see all the pieces to the puzzle fitting. It really is, because in one sense, we want to give guys at bats and see if you can leverage that cost efficient pre-arb guys. Owen Casey, Alcantara, Shaw, Cam Smith coming up, Triantos. At the same time, it's really difficult to see how that's even possible when the entire team is filled up of 2 WAR players.
Yeah.
So
half of whom have a no trade clause.
Yeah. So it's really hard to reconcile those 2 truths. And that does give some optimism, but also some just questions of how it can even be accomplished. And I don't know what the answer to that is unless you go out and make a significant splash in the trade market. But then again, you talked about Vlad Guerrero Jr. The Blue Jays are out there courting big free agents right now too. There's no inclination they even want to give up Vlad Guerrero Jr.
Yeah.
I don't know where they can do this.
Great. I don't know.
I mean, literally, the plan might be, as bad as it sounds, it might be just waiting this out and see what you got. I hate to say that, but they've made this.
Well,
this is their bet.
No,
They've made their bet.
I don't get what I actually think their plan is. If you ask my real opinion of no optimism, like straightforward, this is what I think they're going to do. I think the Morgan thing is a good indication. I think that's a good baseline. I think they try to make,
by the way, make that clear. It's
a
good trade. Yeah.
I think they try to improve. Over the last couple of years, they have seen a lot of really awful performances on their roster. The bottom of the roster last year, I think they had 2 positions that were sub replacement level, third base and catcher. Now they obviously upgraded at third base. How Paredes' profile plays at Wrigley Field, we'll see how that all translates. The first couple weeks or months, whatever, he's not going to perform that poorly. He's got a track record of being a good player. If he's not as good as he was in Tampa because he can't rip those home runs down the line, and maybe some of them are doubles, maybe some of them are outs, fine. He's still going to be a good player. Catcher, we'll see about Amaya. I still think even the move, they made earlier this week, like they need to upgrade that position. And I think they continue to make moves like that. You have got to try to, and this pair as well, hopefully this has already been done by the time this episode airs, but like, hopefully you guys are all hearing this in a world where Nick Madrigal has been non-tendered by the Chicago Cubs. As soon as I see it, you'll get a tweet from me, probably the Michael Scott sending Toby off in the office that I like to use when the Cubs get rid of my enemies. But hopefully we're done with that. But that's a good example. Like the Mastrobonis, the Madrigals, the Barnharts, the Mancinis, that's the way I see them trying to get better. If they're not going to make the big splash, stop rostering sub-replacement level, just bad players. And now, granted, they didn't think they were doing that when they made those moves, but they have to be better about that. If you're not going to go out and sign the 8 WAR players that kind of make some mistakes on the roster a little more tolerable, you have got to nail every member of that roster. There can't be one piece of waste on the roster. And so I think that that's the way they try to do that. You look at some of those things, they let Patrick Wisdom go. I mean, I'll ask you about that in a second, but like, that's a good example. Like, as the years went on, his production went down, his overall value went down, et cetera, et cetera. So looking at those things, saying, okay, we need a bench guy, we need a extra man, we need a utility guy. You have got to go out and sign or trade for a better performer in that regard. And I think when you look at the free agent market, you look at potentially what might be available in the trade market, I think that they can do that. Now, that would be very unexciting and like not the way we want them to act. But at the very least, I can see how okay, if you make the last, let's call it 6 spots of the roster better and try to trim out those sub replacement level players. I mean, at certain points last year, you had like 3 guys on the team with like a 40 WRC plus. You can't have that if you don't have, as you said, you got a big roster of 2 to 3 win players. You can't have that if you don't have those massive performers. So I think trying to improve that area, hoping PCA continues the way he did in that second half, takes that next leap, performs like the star that you believe he is. See if you can integrate Matt Shaw at some point, somehow, even if it's slowly to begin the year or to begin his MLB career. Hope that Seiya, maybe you move him to DH, keeps up that 140 WRC plus
Maybe
type
better.
behavior that he's been on. And
Yeah.
that's what I think they're going to do.
The template is Milwaukee. Milwaukee was a 79-win team on paper by Pacoda going into 2024. Milwaukee ended up having one of the best bullpens in the league thanks to unexpected or guys who didn't have the best projections in their bullpen. If you look at blown saves, we all know the numbers by now. The blown saves, the Cubs had 26 blown saves, among the most in Major League Baseball. On this list right now, they were number 6 in MLB in blown saves. Lowest on the list, among the lowest, is Milwaukee. So Milwaukee had a 73% save percentage, only 19 blown saves. So that's 7 difference right there. The way the Cubs might be seeing this is like Milwaukee, let's shrink up the room for error in the bullpen. So although you're projected in the 80s to mid 80s, well, if you can somehow stretch out some value from your current positional guys and limit the breakage in the bullpen, well, maybe you can actually outperform that record by 3, 4, 5 wins. And that may give you to the upper 80s, a wild card spot in a playoff contender, while you keep your prospect potential open. That way in 2026, can't believe it's already 2025. It's crazy that we're going to talk about this team right now in 2025. That way in 2026, the flurry of pre-arb valuable guys is so high that you can actually make really big trades in the likes they did in the mid 2010s. That may be the path forward. And I think it is going to be the path forward.
I think it is. And look, that might work. And if it does, great. I'm not rooting against them because they're not signing Juan Soto.
I mean, like, dude, like in a vacuum,
it's
like
precarious.
It is. In a vacuum, if you remove the past 4 years, okay, remove the past 4 years, all the disappointment we've had about the urgency or not the timing wise, remove 4 years, it actually might make sense. Like you have 8 top prospects in AAA. I want to be a 90-win team on paper, but it is not possible to get where we want in this offseason. It's not possible. So if you remove the last 4 years, it might make sense to, unfortunately for us, once again, to go into the season hoping they outperform their 82 to 85 win projection.
The problem just becomes we don't exist in a vacuum. I know you're not suggesting that.
I'm not.
It's like all of us have spent the time and energy and in some cases a lot of money by choice.
Well, you, not me.
You by choice. But, on these like wasted seasons for a team that is just raking in money and crawling up the, value list. So it's like, I hear you, but it's like, it's like this level of like inactivity toward the playoffs is not tolerated by a lot of these big market teams, but apparently it is by the Cubs. And that plan might work. It really might. And it would set them up to potentially really
have that long. Yeah.
And
long-term
again,
success.
I see the vision, but it's still very risky. You'd be going into next year in a similar spot where it's like, well, if people overperform, if you win a lot of those close games, then maybe you can get there. But
can I have the counterpoint to that though? The risk profile. It's risky for the current front office, but you see it through. And if it does not work out, then from the business operations, from Tom's perspective, you turn it over and you start a new leaf. You bring it over someone younger, try to get someone's pedigree like Theo Epstein, and you completely overhaul the system. And they may want to run it. They may want to just see it through and then decide at the end of the offseason.
Yeah. I think the other trick too is, again, like I I understand it, but you have to be careful. There's great risk, not just in the construction of these kind of like low 80s teams that we always talk about, but there's great risk in, leaning on your system and counting on guys to develop the way that you want. We just saw the Cubs get rid of Brennan Davis, like a very good, like cautionary tale. Like, no fault of the organization, no fault of Brennan Davis. He just got hurt. He's a human being. He had some bad injuries, like that he just could not recover from. But like, we had conversations on here not even a couple years ago where you're like penciling him in as your center fielder for the next 10 years, like the way he was developing and how he was playing. Sometimes it just doesn't work. Sometimes it's a development issue. The organization fails a player. That happens all the time, of course. The player has off-field issues, things like that. This was just like bad luck, but that's part of the deal. So I think that's where some of that like risk also is highlighted. It's like, I see the vision of like trying to improve this team as much as you can. You saw they got destroyed by blowing saves, 1-run games, all those little things. As you said, if you can find a way to build a pitching staff and an offense that's good enough to scratch across a few runs and say, you know what, we're not going to sign Juan Soto. We're not going to, be crazy this offseason. But what we're going to do is we are going to go into the season with a belief that we will not lose 1-run games. We will win these games if we have a lead in the 7th inning. You see a lot of teams that are able to pull this off. Cleveland was one of them. You see those crazy stats that they put up like in the playoffs or anything. They lost 2 games all year when they were winning after the 7th inning. Like, that's the type of team the Cubs need to be. And you can do that without like crazily spending money or mortgaging the future. But as you said, like, that puts a lot of, and this is a natural case, but it just puts a lot of pressure on, like, Matt Shaw better be a star. Like, Owen Casey better be a star. PCA better be a star. Because anything less than that, you're not committing lately to the upper tier level talent that is already established as those players. So I see the vision. I think that's what they're going to do. And if it worked, it would set them up nicely. But there's great risk in that as well.
Great risk. It's unlikely those guys you mentioned become stars at the onset. I'm talking April, May, maybe by August, July, being a little ambitious, July, they can kind of show signs of that happening, but it's unlikely. It's also difficult to trade those guys for a bona fide star as well. We all want stars. And by star, we want to shrink down the nonsense, and you shrink down the nonsense by bringing in a heavily loaded WAR guy. That's the way you do it.
Yeah.
It's unlikely they can accomplish that. So my thinking is this, from the Cubs perspective, how they're interpreting this, not my view, but how they're interpreting this. The argument goes, well, we won 83 games and our bullpen was one of the worst bullpens in the league for 2 months. We won 83 games despite blowing the 6th most saves in Major League Baseball. We won 83 games with Dansby Swanson's knee messed up,
Sure.
with PCA not a consistent contributor, with right field defense being a problem, with our catcher position being a complete wreck for half the year, and no third baseman. What if we run it back? We have Paredes at third base all year. We have our bullpen stable at the back end, manifested through Eli Morgan. PCA's now full-time in center field, and you have right field defense shored up. Well, you can make the argument to your bosses that, hey, we actually progressed. It didn't show, and now we're going to win have a 90-win season.
Yeah.
That's the argument likely being made.
I think that's what's going to happen. Yeah. And again, I do want to clarify, for is like, talking about how pessimistic we are, pissed off, whatever.
We're jaded.
Like,
it's different.
Again, they're in a relatively good spot. There are 20 something probably teams that are worse off than the Chicago Cubs. Like, more, they didn't make the playoffs. I understand that. But in terms of like their overall health and position, it's not the worst place to be. And the plan that we're kind of talking about now, it can totally work. To play devil's advocate to that, though, is like, okay, like for the last, toward the end of the season, for like the last calendar year, Seiya Suzuki was literally a top 10 hitter in baseball.
Can he do it again?
That can't dip. If it dips, then you don't have one, right? You have nobody that's
what about Shota repeating last year?
Yeah. Justin Steele. Does he stay healthy? Have you wasted his best years, or does he have his best years in front of him? Like,
how
there's
does
a lot of
PCA
ways
develop? Is the bat for real? Can Paredes maintain what he showed in Tampa Bay with that 2-month stretch? That's why it's
there's a
built
lot of
in.
risks.
That's why
you need not only do you need the over performances, you need to bring in these guys that shore up some of the cracks and get rid of, trim the fat. But you also need like nobody to regress. Like that also can happen, or just like a little bit. So that's what I think they're going to do. And I think that it can work. But again, we're going to be going into the year saying, all right, well, like we need PCA to like be this guy for 162 games. We need Seiya Suzuki to continue being a top hitter in the league. We need Ian Happ to keep putting up these seasons that he's been putting up, like stay where he is. We need Dansby to not, hurt his knee and then lie to everybody about it or whatever happened there. Like, it's just a lot of ifs. So, and it goes back to like our main complaint is we just, given where the Cubs organization stands and who they are, would prefer not to have this many ifs, but it doesn't mean it can't work. And it doesn't mean that they can't be a good team and that the organization is in some like disaster of a state. I hope it doesn't come across that way. When we have these conversations.
No, it's fine to have those risks too. It's just the risk that we're talking about. The ideal way to manage it is to have a front-loaded value guy at the top of the order. That way I'm fine doing that. But when the average projection is that of a 2 to 3 win player with some of the shakiness you're talking about, well, it does leave you a little bit unsettled. But then again, like you mentioned all the best case scenario, and it's actually not difficult to think it won't work out. Like it's pretty easy to envision PCA being a good player next year. Pretty easy to envision Seiya being the same guy. He's had 2 years now of like good production, and like it's probably more likely than not that Paredes figures it out just based on the high sample size.
No question. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably likely he's going to figure it out. And then Dansby, like he was fine post knee injury, and even the full sum of the year, still a 4-win player. Like you can easily see it working out. And I bet some people listen to us right now, and they're getting a little optimistic. They're thinking like, oh, you know what?
I was going to say,
maybe they're right. But like that, but that's like, again, this is built into their like projection. Like what we're talking about, that's why they're 83 wins and not 75 wins. Yeah. That's exactly what I'm talking about. This is uncertainty.
They're viewed as solid, but
they're viewed as solid.
Uncertain. Yeah.
That's right. And
it's very easy to see how they move up. It's very easy to see enough goes wrong that they
move down. You look at Milwaukee too, like they're probably going to lose Adames. Like they're going to lose their slugger, their 3-4 hitter. So
they'll find some made up person.
And they'll find some
5 home runs.
They just like took over like the St. Louis Cardinals, like
they did. I think
or something.
I don't know what happened.
My God, what the hell happened over there?
Don't know.
Anyway, so I mean,
I mean that's a good contrast too, because like St. Louis is in a position where they
turned it over
when they're admitting that they're like we're getting rid of people, we're cutting payroll, like, and so like that's not what the Cubs are doing. We're frustrated that they're not kind of aggressively trying to position themselves with like the Dodgers or the Yankees or whatever. But that's just us holding them to a standard we believe that they should be at and be aspiring. It doesn't mean that they're bad or that the organization is in disarray. Yeah. But also at the same time, like it's not fun to do these podcasts if we just come on and are like, sure, we love everything they're doing. Like, hope it works out,
Are you putting on a show? Are you faking all this? Are you secretly optimistic right now? And you're just like lying to everyone?
This has just been a character.
So do you think that sounded well? No, but like, I mean, some other positives too, if we're going to be a little positive right now, like they're doing some supposedly cutting edge stuff. Like they just hired a pretty well-respected new pitching consultant in Tyler Zombra, like 30-year-old guy from Shred Athletics, was former Rays dude. Like, that seems pretty interesting, pretty fun.
Listen, I would love in however long to look back and be like, man, we doubted Jed Hoyer.
No,
and
don't do the
we
doubted
shouldn't have,
stuff. Like there's that's what I don't want to have this come off as doubt. Hasn't earned confidence.
Sure, fine.
Hasn't earned confidence. Sure. Doesn't mean I
know
think
what you mean.
Yeah, doesn't mean I don't think it can work out. You've always said it can work out. It's just the pace at which this is going undeniably is slow.
I just meant I'm more than happy to live in a world where, we look back and we're like, man, we should have been beating the drum for Jed and just like trusting everything he ever said. And wow, did this work out in spades? Like,
it really was a great idea to play Nick Madrigal at third base for an entire year. Great idea. That Trey Mancini deal.
I am happy to eat crow all the time, or not have been totally right on something. I just want the Cubs to be good. And I say that all the time. That's why we're all here. If you're still watching this episode, you've listened to Brendan or I for any number of time over the last 10 years or so, we all, I promise, have the same goal in mind. We might disagree with how the Cubs should get there or if they've reached, where we want them to, but we all just want them to win. I don't care how they do it. I don't care who they do it with. Just win baseball games. That's all I'm interested in.
And we've been wrong many times, always wrong, stupid wrong. You can go back to the countless episodes. Oh, you're always right. Yeah, maybe that is true. but same with the front office. The front office, I think what needs to be emphasized for my thinking is this is their jobs. Of course, they want that 90+ win team. Yeah. This is their job. They don't do this, they're fired. Baseball turnover is rapid. They believe that this is the best path forward. Unfortunately, it has not worked out for them. That sucks from their point of view. They're not happy. They're not happy seeing an 83-win team. They had Tom Rigaciona in the spring training clubhouse clapping that we're going to win the division going into 2024. He's not happy either, although he's breaking in the money. Maybe, quite frankly, he doesn't care, right? But I probably wouldn't be happy. You're missing out on playoff revenue as well. The Cubs want to win. Now, do they want to win to the degree that Poen wants to win and the Dodgers want to win? Well, no. No. And that rarely happens for most ownership groups. Yeah. This is our reality, but there is still some perspective to be gained. And this front office wants to win, but they're just not meeting the standards as you and I. But they can still do it.
Yeah. All right. So we got to wrap here. I'll end by saying, I do want to add, shout out to Patrick Wisdom. I don't think that was, we need to have a big, deep conversation. I think it was time for them to do that. I think they can, find better. But he was a guy, they pulled out of thin air, who had, I think, been released by St. Louis, not given a shot there or a full shot. They gave it a shot and he provided really good value for them. He had that red hot stretch in 2021 that for a minute, looked like it might save that season. And he's been a fun player to watch. I know a lot of people don't love the batting average, but he slugged and there was a lot of time where the Cubs didn't have anybody that could do that. And, for a utility bench kind of guy, played a lot of positions for this team, did what was asked of him. I know a
great clubhouse guy. People love him.
Clubhouse guy.
Great
a lot
looks.
Of people got a kick out of his stash or his chest, stuff like that. So, maybe not a full discussion, but, did warrant, I think. Cheers, Patrick Wisdom. Yeah. Some fun memories with Patrick Wisdom.
Absolutely.
Always a guy that I'll root for and I wish well. So we can end with that. And like I said, hopefully by the time this is airing, Nick Madrigal is joining him and our long national nightmare is finally over.
That's actually something to look forward to.
It literally is. I'm hoping that I'm, reading that in due time. I think that's it. Before we sign off, obviously just want to, remind everybody still a few, I think we've got 3 Chicago Bears tailgates left with the CHGO Bears crew. They do great work. So many live shows, post-game shows, events. Visit allchgo.com. Think about becoming a diehard member, free merch, access to the Discord, discount on the events. It's Blackhawks season, Bull seasons. Our CHGO Bulls and Blackhawks crew do great works. Got CHGO Chicago Sky going on. Our CHGO White Sox crew doing their off season, which we talk about how I can't imagine how you and I do these episodes all the time. Godspeed to Herb, Sean, and Vinny covering that team. Heroes to their community.
They would die to be in our position right now.
Right. So check out everything going on at CHGO. Visit allchgo.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, CHGO Sports. Brendan and I will talk to you next week. Hopefully we have some more Cubs news. We had some moves this week, which was nice. And then, the bullpen move we like. I think it makes the team better.
A good move in November.
That's a good start. Incremental, but it's a good start. So
steps.
Brendan and I will talk to you next week. We appreciate all the support. Talk to you soon. And as always, go Cubs.
We all silly like the mayor.